Hey, comicbook.com, BD here at San Diego Comic-Con. And right now, I'm thrilled to be talking about BRZRKR, the creative geniuses behind it. We have Keanu Reeves, we have Matt Kindt, and we have Garney. Thank you for taking the time to talk. First of all, Keanu, I have to come to you first.
Okay.
You've done some really cool stuff in your career, but I feel like creating a comic book and then getting to physically hold it and know people.
High on the list.
How does that feel when that first happens?
It's amazing. To go from an idea and then have the support of Boom Studios as a publisher who then introduced me. I'd never been a part of a comic book. So I think they were like, let's get them some people who know what they're doing. So then they, introduced Matt Kindt and then Garney, who's, they're both kind of in the GOATs in the comic book world. And so it's been a really great experience to be able to collaborate with them.
I'd love to hear about that. What has Keanu brought to it that you've got to work with as a new comic book writer?
No, well, first of all, he goes in and fixes all of the dialogue. But no, what's funny is like you may not. This is your first comic, but I swear we were working on the last issue, and I'm listening to you, and you're talking about page turns and panel counts and everything, and I was like, yeah, it's like I can't wait.
The kid has learned.
I can't wait to see what you do after this. I was like you.
I'm like, Garney, we're giving Garney too many panels. We're not giving him space to draw.
And I'm like, no. We were supposed to torture the artist. He won't do it. It's not me. I'm just kidding.
When you're writing BRZRKR, do you write it with any of like Keanu's skills from other films or things that he's put on display, and help it influence the character at all?
I don't push it that way at all. Like we talked about it, and it was like your original idea, and like when you're pitching it to me, I try to clear my head and like take all of that away, and then just like try to make it what your vision originally was, and then there's I feel like there's personal things in there that sort of work as subtext or whatever, but I don't like to think about that stuff too much. I'd rather just like we tell our story, and then whatever it means, whatever it is what it is, rather than like, oh, here's what it means, and then we put it in there.
It's kind of like Interview with the Vampire when Lestat is telling his story to Christian Slater, I think it was, or whatever. That's what I picture him just sitting there, like recording all this stuff, and Keanu's just telling this story. The detail is pretty remarkable, and it's right down. It's very fine tuned on the littlest things. One time I had drawn, and I was going to get to this myself anyway, but I'm going to say it. There was a chimney on one side of a house. And I thought the same thing, and then I got a note back. Do you think we can move the chimney to the other side of the house?
Yeah.
I know. I thought the same thing when I said it. He caught it. I'm like, oh my God, this guy is really focused on this.
I'm not the one that tortures you.
Nobody else would have.
What sort of comics did you grow up a comic reader? Did you have any superheroes or publishers? Because it seems like you've picked up quite a few tricks of the trade.
No, I mean, what did I read? I read definitely Frank Miller. So Frank Miller's Wolverine, Batman. As a kid, I was reading Ghost Rider, Richie Rich, New Mutants, X-Men, Love and Rocket, a series called Mage. What else did I collect? Who else did I? Yeah, Swamp Thing. No, not so much Swamp Thing. I read a couple Swamp Things. Watchmen. I guess that would be the kind of big overview of comics.
Do you remember if you had one that was kind of like your prized possession, or if you still have it now, it's kind of like maybe your most valuable, quite literally most valuable after all these years?
Gosh, they're in storage. I mean, I think the Frank Miller Wolverine is probably the four issue series of Wolverine is probably snicked.
That's amazing. Ron, I wanted to come to you about the art in the book because it's super raw, it's super gritty, and it's got like it has a lot of heart to it. And that's at the end of the day, this book shows that there is a lot of complexity to an 80,000-year-old man, and the things that come with outliving everybody around you. Really, I'd love to hear about the inspirations you got for that.
Okay. I'm sorry. I'm still trying to see if I can see any Richie Rich influence in there, but I'm trying to think how I can put that in somewhere. Yeah. So what was the question? No, I got it. Right. Yeah. Well, honestly, it's so savage that, I have to go to places inside my head that most people wouldn't want to go to, but I'm not afraid to do it. So I did a book before this one called Men of Wrath, and I remember Keanu said he read it and he says it's really violent. And I'm like, if he's saying that's violent, then it must be violent because of this book is like beyond, So it's just being able to go to that place and it's funny because I can't look at it in real life. It's, I have an aversion to it, but I have to go there, artistically and look at it as artistically, not gratuitously. And that's what helps me.
That's the violence side of it. I mean, I think in the scale and scope of the characters that, you and I have been working on, Matt, I think the way that into what you mentioned in terms of the heart, like the issue that was about love and loss and grief, for me, seeing it drawn or come to life, I've been really struck by the pathos and the sensitivity to the intimacy of the characters and to the scope of their feeling.
Probably with Diana and B in his living room jumps to mind. I tried to really create that intimacy, and then there's a moment where it cuts off there, because she's sort of taken back by something he says. And but I really try to create that feeling. And the things you guys are coming up with, though, like with the Etta James and then the time, the flow of time, all these things are a next level sort of thought going into the story that, that there's a depth there that you don't get to see from a lot of, movies and comics, so we're all very lucky to, to be able to read something like that where you really, it makes you think,
I'd love to hear about your perspective of honing in on a character, because this is a character 80,000 years old in the story, with his parents and all the things that come with living that long and wanting to die, wanting the ability to be able to die, tapping into that headspace and helping hone in on a character that is that complex. Where do you find the inspiration for that?
Yeah, no, I think that was one of our early conversations was like we had to decide, like, does he want to die? Does he want to be able to die? Does he want something else? And I think part of it is he wants to be able to die, but also he wants to know like what his purpose is, like that's the real thing he's after, in like 80,000 years, he still can't figure it out. Like what hope is there for any of us to figure that out? Like it's such a universal question though, but I think that's what you kind of respond to is like him trying to figure out like why am I here? Like what is my purpose? And he's slightly unique in the world.
But life after death, even because if there's life after death, and that's immortal as well. And would the angels feel that way, that they wish they weren't angels? Ever? I mean, it kind of there's so many layers to the thought of it. That,
I think that's one of my favorite things we did too. Is we sort of sucker punched people with the opening. The first issue was like all violence and action, and then we have Diana show up at his door, and then we have that music issue where it took us a long time to even figure out what song, and like we looked at all kinds of lyrics. Yeah, it was just like, what do we do here? And it was super important. It was cool to just be able to bounce back and forth between that.
And as you get ready for this to go into new mediums, a movie, anime, as you just announced in Hall H, are you having that in mind while writing this story at all?
No. Yeah, no.
Are those going to be like those are continuations of the story, or is it kind of like an adaptation?
I mean, it's some kind of version of a reimagining. So there's a couple of rules, like the character. I don't want to play with the history of the character, but any other creators, storytellers that get involved, I want them to be able to make the story their own.
Have you considered, because there's a lot has happened in the world history over 80,000 years, a lot is going to happen in the future. Have you considered playing with different time periods for stories like that? Okay. And which ones are most interesting to you?
I personally, we've spoke about maybe going to ancient Japan. I like kind of ancient human history. So like pre-Younger Dryas, like 12,000 years ago. Like what were the civilizations that are no more, that we have little fragments of? I'm interested to go back in there.
Yeah,
exactly.
And I want to end with this, because you've played so many cool characters. You've been a part of so many cool worlds. Anybody, anyone or anywhere, you think it would be fun to just in fantasy world imagine BRZRKR interacting or inhabiting?
In fantasy world? Where do we want to go?
In the Keanu Reeves multiverse?
Oh my gosh. What do you actually like? What do you mean?
If you got to see Berserker go into a world that you've played a character in or lived in yourself, or a character you've played, get to see them interact.
I'd like to see Berserker. It'd be interesting. The world of Constantine.
Yeah.
To your point of angels and demons.
Yeah, what would they make of him? You know, like what is he?
Yeah. Oh, well, awesome, guys. Thank you so much for the time, everybody. If you're not reading Berserker yet, go pick it up at your local comic shop and get ready for Berserker, about to take over the world in every medium, and we're here to support it. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Stay tuned to comicbook.com for more from San Diego Comic-Con.